Aaron Tuttle here. It's storm season in Oklahoma, and with that comes torrential rain, high winds, and hail. To protect your home and your family from these threats, the one roofing company you should trust is Ferguson Roof Systems. They've been providing the best in roofing services for nearly half a century. Ferguson is Oklahoma's full-service roofing company, certified with an A+ Better Business Bureau rating and a 5-star rating on Google. And with Ferguson now offering Class 4 impact-resistant shingles, now is the time to trust them with your home's roof. Get started today at FergusonRoofSystems.com.
Hey everyone, Meteorologist Aaron Tuttle with you. Got some gremlins going on in my office. There's this twinkling noise. It drives me crazy. It'll be in my head. So if I get distracted later and you hear a ding, you're going to know why. That's irritating. Somewhere behind me. I'm blaming Joe. See, there it is again. I'm going to blame Jody. I don't know where it's coming from. It's something on my computer, I'm sure. So whatever. All right, hey, thanks for joining me. It is 9:38 on a Thursday night. I know why you're here. You want to find out if we're going to get some more storms. You know, we're going to get some severe weather. Thank you, bye. What is that noise? Oh, I think I know what it is. Oh, okay, I'm muting it. All right, well, okay, how do I mute this stupid thing? Hold on, let me turn this down. All right, I'm getting there. Hold up. There we go. Turn that down. Okay, now I can't hear it. Okay, so what happened was Facebook changed their API, how I normally broadcast with my software, and it booted me out, and I couldn't get in. That's what happened at lunch today. So I had to go through the Facebook Live Interaction dashboard channel, which is a pain in the butt. So anyway, until my software company fixes that API that Facebook broke, we'll get to do it this way. Anyway, it's causing the beeping noise. So now I figured it out. Phew. All right, now I'm not crazy. Okay, anyway, back where was I? So thanks for tuning in up there on YouTube land. Also on Rumble and on Twitter. Earlier, sorry about the video issue during lunchtime. Like I said, we're good to go now, though. Got to work around in progress. So you should be getting all of your content, video, audio, all that stuff. So thanks for leaving your comments. Tell me where you're checking in from, all that kind of stuff. And then leave me some stars. That's very cool of you. Same thing for YouTube, where they send out the YouTube gifts on there as well. I forget what they call those things. Anyway, so let's get this thing started. So I pretty much just loaded up the new data because it just comes in about this time of the night. So some of this will be fresh. We'll look at it together. Others at least had a little bit of a look to it. So we're going to tell you what the latest data says. It's whether or not you're going to be woken up in the middle of the night with some tornadoes, right? Because nobody wants that. So just before we even get started, just so you know, you need to have a game plan in place. It's always the lowest part of your floor, building, etc. Centermost part of the home, away from all outside walls and windows. Tell your kids, tell your pets what's going to happen. You know, if it happens at 2 or 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, you can already have a game plan. Keep your clothes with you. Keep your shoes with you. Keep your NOAA weather radio on high alert. Keep my weather app with you. AT's Weather to Go. It's free. Apple, Google Play. So all those things are protective manners and methods to make sure that you're prepared not only for just this event, but also any other event that happens during our normal spring. So out there currently, we do have cloudy skies. You can almost feel the humidity, right? It feels like a stormy day. I've got 73 degrees here in my backyard. And if you look elsewhere across the state, we have kind of a south-southeasterly breeze here across all of Oklahoma. And we have temperatures in the red numbers here in the low 70s to mid-70s, dew point values in the 60s, mid to upper 60s in that case. So as a reminder, at least for producing tornadoes in our environment in Oklahoma, the atmosphere really favors 60-plus dew points. In other words, you got to get into the 60s. The higher you are in the 60s or even low 70s, the better the opportunity to get some type of severe weather that could lead to tornadoes. Now, out there currently, I want to show you a real picture of the setup here. And here across Oklahoma, remember the cap was strong today, so we had no issue with severe storms. We do have some light showers breaking out up here across northeastern Oklahoma on into Missouri. If you look up here toward Kansas, all the activity that was developed earlier today has moved up north into Nebraska and has continued to kind of fizzle a little bit. I don't know. They had a tornado watch. I don't know if they had actually any tornado warnings up there. The storms down into the Texas Panhandle, as I alluded to yesterday, and at noon, the cap was very strong, so I was doubtful they would develop, and they did not. Down here, though, is where our show is beginning. It's these cluster of storms out here way out in western Texas. There is a severe thunderstorm watch for these, and they will be making their way up to the north and east with time. So they will be heading on up into this fashion into the Oklahoma City metro area and southern Oklahoma as we head into our overnight hours. Now, before we get into the data, I need to bring to your attention reality just real quick. All right, so this is how I want you to understand what we're talking about, especially if you're new here to Oklahoma. All right, so here's the boundary of Oklahoma. By the way, always know what county you live in, and of course, what major city you live by, especially if you're kind of out in what we call the boonies. So there is, again, our state of Oklahoma. Now, when you're not from here, you hear that all we have is horses and tornadoes. I'm going to let you know that we both have those, yes, but that is not what we are known for, and that is not what we have all over the place. So let's take an example, and let's say we do get a tornado. All right, Oklahoma is a very big state. So what does a tornado look like in a big state? Guess what? I've got 3 on the map right here. Do you see them? No, you don't. Let's zoom in. You see them now? No, I see some roads. Looking smaller. Remember, this is a needle in a haystack. Oklahoma is a very big haystack. You might be starting to see something there showing up on the map. You see this? Remember, we're looking for a tornado. This is how small a tornado is with respect to the entire state of Oklahoma and where you live. So, all right, here we go. So this is our first tornado that we're going to talk about here. And I'm doing this to give you perspective. So this particular case, this is a EF0 to EF1 tornado. Its width is about 150 yards, has wind speeds less than 110 miles per hour, and is over 80% of all tornadoes fall into this category. Now, that's good, right? So they can be as tall as, 5,000 feet, for example. So I just kind of drew this as what this would look like here on Google Earth. So you can see how small this is, and what you see here, this is a square mile. All right, so 1 solid square mile, this is how big that is, very tiny. That's great news. All right, so I need you to understand that most of the tornadoes we have in Oklahoma are tiny like this one, and they are weak, less than 110 miles per hour. Let's go to the next category. All right, and that is going to be the EF2 to EF3. Now, this can average up around 300 yards in diameter. It will have wind speeds less than 165 miles per hour and is about 18% of tornadoes. Now, again, this is how the size of that looks to a square 1 mile block, again, out here across Oklahoma. So, again, it's a very small area. Now, I will say that most of our injuries seem to want to happen, and even some of the deaths, around the EF3 category and EF2, probably just because, and I don't know, I didn't look deep into the data, because structure-wise, the structures hold up really well. I think it's mainly just for people outdoors, not getting caught off guard in cars and just susceptible to the elements. I think is where that number gets up a little higher. And I think that's the reason for that one. Now, when we go to the big one, all right, so let's go to the large tornado. So obviously you can get a perspective here. This is a half-mile wild I've drawn. And there has been some that's been larger than a half-mile wild. But that's a pretty good size. Even some of them are even that big. But do have winds up to around 200 miles per hour or a little higher. Doppler radar has estimated winds higher than that. But structural integrity-wise, 200 is really all it takes to cause what they call a slab clean. In other words, where no matter what kind of home you're built in, that does wipe that slab foundation clean. But this is how that would look, how large it is. So if you compare this one to these others, now remember, this one here is about 2% of all tornadoes, and that's mostly in the EF4 category. So the EF5 is very rare. And the EF5s, I think it's like on average a 1 every 10 years cycle. So just keep in mind, when we're talking about tornadoes, I want your brain to, yes, take them serious, but I want your brain to understand statistics and probabilities. And I want you to understand this is a needle in a haystack. You can go your entire life and never see a tornado here in Oklahoma. Look how small those things are compared to the rest of the state. So just make sure that's always up here, along with your plan in place of what you're going to do should one affect you. Okay, so now let's get into the data. Let's see what's new. So we do have the upper level low pressure system out here spiraling around across Colorado. So this is our guy. And if we look right here, you can see a little moisture trail. This is a Pacific jet coming on in, the subtropical jet. It actually helped to clear off some showers and storms up to our north and northeast. If you look right here at the tail end of this, right here, new kickoff of those storms right there. And that'll be what ends up into Oklahoma later on tonight. So the Storm Prediction Center has updated their severe weather risk for tonight. Still enhanced from Oklahoma City, southwest, to about where we show those storms on radar. So the tornado probability is just a generic 5%, that they didn't really change any, and they probably could have really massaged this and cut this back quite a bit. But regardless, there it is. And there's the wind, getting a little heightened area from Oklahoma City south and west, and also the hail south and west as well. All right, so let's take a close-up view. This is from the Norman National Weather Service office. So wind speeds, take note of this, up to 60, maybe even 80 miles per hour, up to baseball size hail. So I think about 3-inch size hail, probably be that the most we can get overnight. And the tornado potential is low. It's not medium, it's not high, it's low. And again, favored for the heavier rounds of storms in this area. And really, for a little while longer, you may want to extend this kind of in this zone here as well. Again, because of the way things are set up, you may not get a whole lot of activity up here in northwestern Oklahoma overnight tonight. If you do look here, they do have a tornado potential of low, pretty much anywhere where you're going to see a storm. Now, as we get past Thursday night, which is tonight, into Friday, there still is a threat of severe weather, not only in the early morning hours, of course, but also maybe late again in the afternoon. So kind of a late afternoon resurgence, and I'll show you that here in a minute. And then on Saturday, there's a big picture of storms across all of the state with the threat of hail, damaging winds, and tornadoes should things align just right. Tulsa also, here's a look at there. Severe weather threat here for tonight. So if you notice, they have it weakening basically by the time it gets to Tulsa by daybreak. And then for Friday afternoon, again, if some things redevelop in this area, we might have to deal with some tornadic activity as well. I'll show you that here in a second. And again, on Saturday, again, widespread area for Oklahoma. Also keep in mind, there's going to be a lot of heavy rainfall. This is just from the National Weather Service model estimates, and you can see 4 to 6 inches across a large area here. So you could get some flash flooding across the northeastern quadrant of the state, kind of bounded by I-35 and I-40. So the AI models didn't do too well today about tornadoes. Like I said, it didn't really materialize all that much today, so it's kind of a bust for them. So just to let you know, when you do see these types of experimental things, grain of salt, don't get too nuts with them. If you look at tomorrow, right now they're kind of focused on the eastern half of Oklahoma to Missouri, Arkansas for the tornado aspect. In this pack, we also call it the avocado. I don't know, I don't know who picks these colors, but somehow that's how we ended up, and so that's what we use, the avocado colors. There's the hail on the right side, and there's the wind on the bottom left. Now let's go into Saturday. And again, Saturday you can see kind of matching what the Storm Prediction Center and the National Weather Service are going with, because they obviously see the same stuff these AI models see. All right, and we'll get to that here a little bit later. If you look at the analogs, which compares past events with a similar setup, right now it does favor this little region here. It's a low probability, 5-10% for Oklahoma for Friday. This contains part of tonight and yes, part of tomorrow. Let me go the next day. So here's let's see, this Saturday, so 10%, and then here's Sunday, 5 and 2%. So the analog data, it's in other words, of all the cases that could produce tornadoes, not all of them did so. If we look at, this is an interesting little parameter. I've been seeing this floating around the internet too, and it's so what it is, it's a basket of indices, all right, and once this number gets up over a certain value, it says right here, 75% of significant tornadoes, which is an EF2 or stronger, have a CWASP value of 65% or higher. Well, our CWASP value for tonight here in the Panhandle was 80. So according to this, you would say, whoa, wouldn't we have an EF2 to EF5 tornado? No. But what you see is these are just what the environment could produce should a tornadic storm go into this environment and take advantage of it. Does not guarantee you're going to have tornadoes. So when you do see this off the chart and people get all excited about it, understand you actually have to have a storm first. If you don't have a storm, then this means nothing. So these are just little indices to kind of show you how well the atmosphere is loaded, so to speak, with ingredients. All right, so we zip on through on this into tomorrow. I want to show you that for the afternoon, it's here across the central I-35 corridor and pretty much all of eastern parts of Oklahoma, even on down to Texas. And let's zip on through from there into Saturday. Let's see, right here. So Saturday, you can see it's got kind of the central part of the state backed up to where the dry line would be, right on the state line, and really a large area. So that's why there's been a lot of excitement about this 3-day severe weather period, just because there's a lot of ingredients on the table. If we look at the overnight period through tomorrow morning, one of the AI models here called NATOcast does favor this little strip here in central Oklahoma, which does include Oklahoma City metro area. Of course, it also favored this area up here, and storms didn't get too crazy. So once again, AI got a little excessive today, but at least it had a general idea. When we look at the storm system here for tomorrow afternoon, it's going to go from Colorado to right up here, so it zips to the north. And it does have a little bit of trail of instability and lift in this area, and we're kind of on the tail end of that. You see this little orange. it still is a little bit what we call positive vorticity advection. In other words, there's still a little subtle lift in the atmosphere. But our main next kicker is this one here, and that'll be moving into Colorado, southeast Colorado for Saturday, and that'll be our next maker. So in between, we have what we call a subtle event possibility. And if we look at the wind fields within that, this is for tomorrow afternoon. The jet is pretty weak at this point in time over the area, so not a big influence at really getting storms to erupt, which means they'll be a little slower to do so. There still is a little bit of a jet streak going overhead at 500 millibars, so they should have a lot of wind with them and some shear, especially here at 850. So some good shear both at the lower and mid levels of the atmosphere to turn those storms, get them to rotate. I alluded to the last couple of days that usually the models will overestimate the eastward progression of the dry line, and they'll eventually catch up and move it back to the west, and that's what they did tonight. They finally caught on. So for the dry line here for tomorrow afternoon, it does look like it stays just on the west side of the Oklahoma City metro area, which means we would have the possibility here of some storms redeveloping in our backyard. I'll just take a click point sounding here over Oklahoma County to show you what happens if we were to get a storm that develops in this environment for Friday afternoon. And you can see here a lot of Cape to work with. This whole area here, that's 4,000 joules per kilogram, no cap at all. Shear goes from a southerly direction to a south to southwesterly direction and westerly direction rather quickly, which means you have some really good decent turning with height. Your ship model is 3.5, which means the hail will be stupid. This has got grapefruit size in the analog data. Also has a wind rating of 2.4, which means you'll have some damaging wind in excess of 80 miles per hour. And should a tornado happen, it does favor the higher end winds, which would be an EF3 or even EF4 on the Whisker plot. So in other words, the atmosphere is pretty loaded for Friday afternoon if we get a couple storms on this dry line. If you do look at this point in time, you do see the shear and Cape values, a little triangle approach here. So there's this little sweet spot, a little theta E axis rolling I-35, which should be enough to fire off those storms. Yesterday we talked about will the atmosphere recover, because there'll be some storms obviously tonight, tomorrow morning. If you notice right here, there's a lack of Cape, right? These colored values disappear. So Cape values here are only a couple hundred. That means the atmosphere has not recovered in this area, but it did recover here, at least on the newest model data. So once again, I do expect some tornadic thunderstorms tomorrow afternoon because of this setup. If we look at the significant tornado parameter, remember it's highest out there in the panhandle right now, but there's no storm, so it doesn't matter. All right, let's zip that through for tonight into the daybreak hours. Now it's going to disappear a little bit where the model has storms. Otherwise, if we just extrapolate and eliminate these little areas, you can see the big purple, stronger intensity for the atmosphere is up to our north, whereas we still have pockets of pretty good intensity, but adequate for some tornado generation overnight. And this goes here through the morning, and then as we zip through the afternoon for, again, anything that fires in the dry line, it's not as, loaded, so to say, tomorrow afternoon versus tonight, but it's still there. And with daytime heating, that'll be a different effect. If we zip this forward onward into Saturday to see how Saturday's setting up, honestly, because of the morning showers and storms, this model's having a trouble getting back to instability. So Saturday's still a wild card so far, just in this one parameter. It does try to sneak in some last minute instability and good parameters out here in western Oklahoma by the end of the day. And then it starts to increase during the evening hours as that trough kicks out. So we'll see what happens on Saturday. Saturday's a really messy situation. As we head to Friday afternoon, this is the lid or the cap strength across the state. Where you see the brighter colors, the stronger the cap, and where you see no color means no cap. So again, the atmosphere thinks we will not be capped tomorrow afternoon. Does it produce storms though? Let's take a look, see what happens with the data. So here's a look at the new high resolution NEM. And I mentioned this at noon. There was a new trend today to keep the heaviest, nastiest part of this cluster of storms across southern Oklahoma and much weaker across northern, even parts of central Oklahoma. So this new run, let's see what happens. It's moving in here toward the daybreak hours here in Oklahoma City. For your drive time, points southward, and it's broken up in nature here into northwestern Texas. There's some bubbling stuff up here in eastern Oklahoma, and I'm going to zoom in to our area here in a minute, but I just want to shoot a big picture. So there's your drive time in the morning hours. Everything starts to move off to the east into Arkansas, Missouri, and Texas. It's a lot weaker, of course, because the storms that do develop overnight are usually weaker anyway. And then as we head into the daybreak hours tomorrow, this model does try to fire off some supercell storms across the dry line here across the I-35 corridor. Again, we'll zoom in here in a minute, and it's got a few storms down here in Texas as well for the late afternoon and evening, but they don't do much. They kind of fall apart. It looks like they run into this more stable air during the late afternoon and evening. They just kind of vamoose and disappear. So that's good. I like that signal. All right, let's go forward from there to Saturday. So Saturday, It has a little cluster of showers or storms that roll through here into southwestern Oklahoma, and that's it. And then it tries to redevelop on that little thin area of instability out here in western Oklahoma. Doesn't do much with these. They move up to the north and northeast into Kansas, tries to fire off a few more. Now the energy looks like it'll be coming in late. So here is a 10 o'clock time frame, meaning things are misaligned again according to the data, and it's going to come in too late. So let's take advantage of the best ingredients to work with for these storms. And we look here, we see another elevated, look to a squall line type criteria from southern Kansas down to central and southwestern Oklahoma, all the way down to Texas, with probably some embedded pockets of hail and wind and probably a tornado or two is the way this thing is looking. This is around the midnight hour Saturday night, and then that's a line that just keeps moving through slowly. Look at the thing all the way down to Texas. So this is a new trend here in this data. So that's what I'm saying. Saturday, there's a lot of talk, there's a lot of promise of what's going to happen. The atmosphere's loaded, and I get that. I do see the ingredients, but it's all in timing, and if you can take advantage of that. Let's take a look at the WRF. Let's see, it did okay for those storms up there in Kansas. Kind of missed the Texas Panhandle a little bit. There's that stuff for tonight. Keeps the heavy stuff down southern half of the state. But you see those little red areas? These are helicity tracks, which means those are pockets of damaging wind, hail, and maybe a tornado or two. All right, and that moves on out to the east. Let's see, and then for tomorrow afternoon, it also tries to bubble up storms just east of the dry line. Some of these does have helicity tracks with them that indicate the potential for a tornado, especially given our environment, and even down here into northeastern Texas as well. Didn't do a whole lot down there in Dallas-Fort Worth, by the way, for that model run. And then there's that stuff for Saturday morning going through lunchtime. Does have helicity tracks with that, probably for some hail and wind. I think the shear was supposed to be a little less favorable for tornadoes, but still some good rotating shear if anything starts too early in the day. But by afternoon and evening, this model, this is an earlier run, so it does not take advantage to the newest data this evening, so it's probably going to be an error, and it may match up better with the other one. But let's just assume that this one is right for the time being. It did have an earlier start of these supercells right at dark here in southwest Oklahoma, and all of these have helicity tracks. So according to this model, it would favor numerous storms producing tornadoes with large hail and damaging winds. But again, this is an old run. It has not seen the new balloon sounding, so will it change its tune? We'll see. It takes longer to update. It's on a local university server, so they're slow with their updates. All right, so let's go into the high resolution model for tonight. So there's our cluster of thunderstorms coming in a little bit later. Let's see, southwest Oklahoma, because remember, they're starting out way out west. So Childress coming in across the border at 2 o'clock in the morning. And there's 3 o'clock in the morning here in Oklahoma City. So, for example, we do a forecast sounding here at this point in time, just to see what the atmosphere looks like. Some decent shear, so good turning with height. Probability of a tornado is on the kind of the EF1 whisker plot to maybe even an EF2. Let's see, ship model 1.3, so that means the hail would be typically under 2 inches in diameter should this entire sounding platform verify. Let's see, from 70 to 62, so we kind of have neutral buoyancy for a while. And then we do get above an area where there is no cap. So technically, according to this model, the cap should not be too much of a factor. So some of these should be surface-based storms. But right now, the look, as far as the strongest storm activity, again, anchors from around Oklahoma City southward, down the turnpike to Lawton. We head on into the 5 o'clock hour. So some of you getting out to work on the roadways, have to deal with some early morning storms. You can see these little pockets, these little heavier cores. So that's indicative. You might have a couple of supercells embedded within this line. Otherwise, it should be a pretty good solid squall line the way this is looking. It's expanding north a little bit here towards Stillwater and toward Tulsa. And sometimes you can have on the leading edge of these little QLCS tornadoes. They're little baby tornadoes, EF0, EF1 mostly. Sometimes you can get a strong one, but they're very rare in the data set. And they don't last very long, usually on the order of seconds to maybe a minute or so. Let's see, let's go to 7 o'clock in the morning. So there's Tulsa south and west. There's 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, still kind of lingering there in southeast Oklahoma. 1, 2, 3. Now this model, it does develop some new stuff late afternoon, but it's way out here. But you can see the sign there of some supercell storms. This is the HER. If I go back to the NAM, closer view of this one. HER sometimes develops things too far east, and it has a bias to mix out the atmosphere. I like the 3-kilometer NAM better for that. So it's going to pop those up right on top of us here in Oklahoma City. So like I said here, for this guy here, it's already got a helicity track in the data set. And we already looked at a forecast sounding for this, which looked pretty pretty loaded here for a tornado. So could we have a tornado in Oklahoma City tomorrow afternoon? Sure could, according to the data set here for tonight. Doesn't last long, which means there is some stability it must run into once it gets a little too far east of the dry line because of that morning stuff. So it is a fine line where the atmosphere can recover or not recover. And it can be in the order of 30 miles to 50 miles, and then it runs into something it doesn't like and it dies. Up here in northern Oklahoma, it looks like also the same kind of idea. Might have a helicity track or two going around the Ponca City area. Keep in mind the models are never exact on the position. That this is a general area, and it can be off by many, many miles. So just because you see your town having one of those storms on top of it does not guarantee that that will be the location that will happen. All right, so let's go on into Saturday. There's that morning stuff, and there's the afternoon. Same idea. In this particular model, it tried to get stuff going out here early. There are a few helicity tracks, maybe a brief tornado threat through 7 o'clock. Those move into Kansas. Tries to fire off again around 9 o'clock, doesn't do much. And then here we have the whole central Oklahoma corridor going up with just numerous, looks like elevated thunderstorms at first, which is supposed to probably get more rooted overnight if the cap can weaken. Let me do a forecast sounding, for example, at 1 o'clock in the morning here south of the metro. Oh, got a big cap here. All right, so that's good news. Let's see. Yeah. So, okay, so the deal here is that the tornado threat is a lot higher as far as the indices are concerned. But if you got a very strong cap that prevents these storms from being surface-based, it doesn't matter. So there's still a fine line here. What happens on Saturday night if we get some embedded tornadoes within this? But otherwise, looks like a pretty good squall line situation with these little bow echoes like this, which indicate straight line winds. And remember, straight line winds can do as much damage as a small tornado. All right, so there's 4 or 5 o'clock through Tulsa, and that whole line weakens, just falls apart toward daybreak. Storms always like to fall apart toward daybreak, which is good, at least around this part of the country. Okay, so let me do this right here. Just kind of give you an idea of how much rotation will be with some of these storms, and rotation meaning that the storms themselves will spin in the mid-levels of the atmosphere, called a mesocyclone. Does not mean you'll always have a tornado, but I just want to show you a lot of these storms do have the middle-level rotation with them. That will show up here in the model data. And where you have these little darker areas like this, that's more of an indication, possibly more of a tornadic signature, just because of the intensity of the numbers that it's reading out of that one particular data point. So that you get to look for these little signals is what you do. Okay, let's see. Wind gusts. The HRRR had some pretty strong winds earlier. Data set tonight, the new runs came in fairly weak. Interesting. Now let's go to, in other words, it has kind of a weaker line coming through than it did in the earlier data set. Let's go to the NAM. Let's see if that does anything. Nope. Kept it weak as well. Interesting. What does it do for Saturday night? It has a signal of the bow, but it doesn't have any data with it. It may just not have enough resolution for that, although it does hint at least some pockets are 65, but not nearly as impressive as it was in the prior. All right, the dry line action here for tonight is out in the western areas of the state, moving east. Let's let it set up here, like we said, around 4 o'clock. So this is going to be setting up around the western side of Canadian County. This is your theta E axis coming up. So you have a good south wind coming in to Oklahoma City, combining with a southwest wind on the western side of the dry line. So your convergence zone is right here. So according to this particular model, we should have some thunderstorms bubble up right on top of us, again with an environment favorable for tornadic conditions. All right, so let's go into, let's see, that's 6 and 7 o'clock. So the dry line does not go any further east than where that is. And then it should retreat overnight into Saturday. And let's go. So there's Saturday afternoon. Stays, really retreated way back west. Yeah, so that's a response to the storm system being slow to kick out. If for whatever reason the model's wrong, the storm system's faster to kick out, and this dry line won't be that far west. But the rate is right now, it's saying, hey, the thing is slower. That's why we have an overnight event and not a late afternoon, evening event here across Oklahoma for Saturday. All right, anyway, so that thing moves east, and it's a repeat of kind of what we're having tonight with a squall line with embedded, a few tornadoes probably here and there. All right, rainfall amounts, at least with this particular model, through Sunday morning. All right, and there you go. There's a widespread area of 1, 2, and 3 inches. These little areas here up around 4 and 5, and these have been dancing around. I just wanted to let you know that the model knows there's going to be some spots of some isolated flash flooding. It just doesn't know the exact position because it all depends on how well the system comes out organized. You know, a good solid squall line, or is it kind of broken up? Is it more elevated? There's a lot of factors that go into play there. But we do look at overall rainfall totals, and we look at the global models too. They also kind of show this widespread hint of 1, 2 to 3 inches. And again, most of this stuff was east of 35 in our earlier data set. Now it's shifting it back here into central Oklahoma. That's the UK Met. Let's see, there's the NAM. There's the ICON model back to the east. American model kind of splits the difference. European to the east side. And let's see, another European for the AI version of it. And then the blend of the model data here. So a nice blend is a conservative blend. Even then, that's a lot of rainfall. Okay, let's see, one more thing here. Timing for, I know there was a lot of events here this weekend. So one last look at the timing for this, like we talked about for tonight, obviously, through tomorrow morning. And then we had the afternoon stuff, late afternoon and evening across the eastern, central Oklahoma to kind of eastern Oklahoma for at least a little while until they fall apart. Now let's go to Saturday. So the European has been very gung-ho at a nice wet start down here in southwest Oklahoma Saturday morning, and then moving through the I-35 corridor through around lunchtime. All right, and then kind of stabilizing the air a little bit. It does have some new development back here to the west. That moves on off to the north and east. So, there was in the earlier data set a break in the action from like lunchtime to evening. But this particular model still kind of keeps a few showers or thunderstorms around, and then it blows things back up around 10 o'clock at night and 1 o'clock in the morning with basically the eastern half of the state as that dry line probably punches eastward overnight into Sunday morning. So the good news is we do have any plans on Sunday morning. You are looking to be rain-free here across Oklahoma City, points west and south, and then pretty much east of I-35. You're still going to have some residual rain to deal with on Sunday morning, but that does move out in the afternoon, and things get much quieter, and we can take a little break from any severe weather. If you do look at the temperatures, we're looking at the 80s and 70s over the next several days for daytime highs. Overnight lows will be in the 50s and 60s. So that looks pretty good there. And if earlier I meant to show you this, just kind of a recap here of what tornado strength is. And if it's an EF0 or an EF1, I call those the baby tornadoes because they don't do a whole lot of damage. Wind speeds are less than 110 miles per hour. These are some examples of homes. For example, this home you couldn't even tell a tornado was in it. This one here knocked off some shingles. So you could call that some moderate damage and may have knocked over some of the small trees and some lawn furniture and stuff. But you can see the integrity of the home is still there. EF2, we can call this considerable damage, up to wind speeds up to 135 miles per hour. But you can see the roof, half the roof is gone, but the integrity of the home, the walls are all still there. That's why I still think, if you've got an EF2, and even in some cases an EF3 tornado, the homes around here are usually built pretty well. As long as they're anchored to the slab and they're done properly up to code, the structure should stay still pretty sound. So this is an EF3 example. Exterior walls, parts of the roof, and upstairs, yes, but downstairs, central part of the home, still well intact. And then you get into the EF4 and EF5, and that's just unfortunately just the way it goes. EF5 will clean the slab off. EF4 won't leave much behind. Half a tree and maybe parts of what was left of the central part of the home. Luckily, again, these are 2% of all tornadoes. This is where the bulk of them are, right here, EF0 to EF1. So it makes you understand that. So when I do mention that tonight we are looking for the potential for a couple of tornadoes around, especially QLCS type, that's what we have to work with. All right, one more jog here to see if anything new on the data came in, because I did not get a chance to look at anything else. And I like to favor the 3-kilometer NAM in most cases. So let me just see what the other CAM models did, and then we're going to turn you loose. Let's see here. Okay. All right, well, according to this CAM model, we should have a supercell blowing up right on top of Oklahoma City here in 50 minutes. All right, that thing moves off. Let's see. This guy down here in the south never crosses the border. Well, wouldn't that be something? All right, then we go to Friday. Dryline tries to fire some stuff off in the eastern parts of the state. Doesn't really do a whole lot. Here's that Saturday morning. It's a little late, though. Comes in later in the morning, so that's midday to lunchtime. And then it keeps firing off new storms for the afternoon here over central and southern Oklahoma. These are helicity tracks indicating tornadic conditions. Let me see here. Do a little click sounding. So there's not a lot of turning with height on the shear So, I mean, the storm will rotate like crazy, but will it produce a tornado? We'll see. Let's see. Anyway, more of those develop as the afternoon wears on, this particular model, all over central Oklahoma. All right, that's a completely different look than the other two. And that particular model that I looked at isn't exactly the most trustworthy. Let's see what this one does. All right, so it's got the storms coming into southwest Oklahoma through Oklahoma City Metro, just like the other ones we looked at. This one I like. All right, and it's got those little guys that try to pop up I-35 corridor, struggled tomorrow afternoon. Okay, and then on Saturday, morning stuff there, blows through central Oklahoma, stabilizes the atmosphere, and in the afternoon, on the western edge of that stabilization into the destabilization, it tries to fire off just numerous supercells with each one of these little helicity tracks, which indicates again the potential for a tornadic situation. Along with the hail and the wind. So that's a couple of convective models in favor of additional storms, even though their positioning was way different from one another. All right, this model is the one that's always out to lunch. We call it the supercell model because you give it, doesn't matter what day it is, it likes to produce supercells. I don't even know why I even bother wasting my time looking at it, but I look at everything just to see what's happening. All right, so there's the morning stuff that goes through. There's afternoon stuff there. All right, there's the morning stuff on Saturday, and there's Saturday afternoon stuff there, and then it's kind of anchored more over central and eastern Oklahoma on Saturday in the evening. There's a line there. All right, what else we got? These are all old, and this isn't finished coming in yet. Let's see what it says. That's pretty lame. Actually, what in the world? It has this thing capped overnight to where it doesn't really produce any surface-based storms at all in this radar signature. Let me see what this looks like. Yeah, it's got a really good cap right here. So it says mostly quiet overnight. Wouldn't that be something? It's fine with me. It does produce some storms, though, there toward daybreak here in central Oklahoma. And that's about it. This one is our experimental model. It's supposed to replace some of the other ones, but I've noticed the weather community doesn't like it. There's a lot of biases and errors in it. I'm going to go with the impasse here. It's an older run from this morning. And look what it did. It completely messed up today out in the panhandle, so that's not trustworthy. All right, there's the stuff for overnight. Oh, it's got absolutely nothing overnight until far eastern Oklahoma. That's interesting. All right. And then to do anything tomorrow afternoon? What did I miss? Yeah, one guy right there that didn't manage to do anything near Tulsa. All right. And then we go to Saturday morning cluster there. And there's an afternoon trying to get going. Looks like struggling in this area. Again, that's old data though, so it's not be very helpful, but I didn't want to look at it and compare it to what came in tonight, this evening. Look here at the wrap. So, my takeaway is to ignore the ones that had absolutely nothing overnight and stick with the old trustworthy 3K NAM. All right, so that's what I have here for you. So I have shown you everything there is to see and to know. I educated you on the strength of tornadoes, how small they are compared to the rest of the state, how little they are, how much land they occupy. There's a lot of open land out in Oklahoma, which is good. We looked at all the model situation data to where, as it looks right now, the way things are timed out, we'll have a little bit of a squall that comes through overnight tonight, late, not even affecting you until early tomorrow morning here in central Oklahoma. It will have pockets of wind and hail with it, although those wind reports have come down in the model data from where they were earlier, probably because the system's a little slower, that's my guess, so it's lost some of its punch. If it was going to come in here at, say, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, that's different than 5 o'clock in the morning, for example. A couple of hours does make a difference because a low-level jet that's strong winds overnight does weaken toward daybreak. So that's a limiting factor for severity of storms. That's why they kind of disappear and just die, basically, toward the daybreak hour. So that's good news. All right, so all that's good news. Still can't rule out an embedded supercell in there that may produce a tornado or a leading edge QLCS type squall line. But the favorable conditions is kind of matches in the data tonight, matches where that moderate risk is drawn, or enhanced risk, I should say, from around Oklahoma City southwest, right? A little quadrant in southwest Oklahoma, because that's where you still have residual instability that hasn't quite waned to take advantage of. So your most likely area for tornado activity would, on the northern fringe, would be from Oklahoma City, but more likely as you go south along the turnpike down toward Lawton, example, and into, say, down I-35 toward Ardmore. That seems to be more of a sweet spot there, and then diminishing returns from that point eastward, just because it's getting too late at night. It's early morning by this point, and things are winding down. So that's the way that looks. That moves off, and then Friday afternoon we have the dry line right on top of us here in Oklahoma City. So odds are we're going to squeeze out a couple of thunderstorms that will go along that dry line, and some of those may be tornadic. So this could happen around 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, especially if the atmosphere is not going to be as capped as what the models suggest. So I have to keep an eye on those. That could be right here in the metro. All right, that could be right here in our backyard. Let's see, those would move northeast. So Tulsa, you might have to deal with that as well, or the rest of northeast Oklahoma, southeastern Kansas for a little while. Those will move out and die off, and now we focus gears towards Saturday. Saturday, still from everything I'm seeing, the timing of that is still an early morning event, coming in once again from southwest Oklahoma through central and northern Oklahoma during the late morning hours to around lunchtime. After that is wild card city, because if the storm system slows down, it may be a deal we don't get storms until the nighttime again, where we have to deal with a repeat of squall lines and all that kind of stuff. If it doesn't slow down and it comes in at a normal speed like the prior data has suggested, and we can recover enough for the afternoon, then we should be able to get some supercell producing thunderstorms, which would have the tornado threat with them as well. But because there's still a lot of unknowns, just everything you're going to hear, grain of salt on over-promising and under-delivering when it comes to tornadoes on Saturday. There's still too much to work out, and it's still Thursday night. All right, we have all day tomorrow to look at that, and even Saturday morning to look at that. Just know we're going to have storms around, and know what the forecast is, and that's really all you need to do at this point. You have everything else in play. You already know what to do. So that's how you prepare and plan, in my opinion, for anything like this. And use my weather app, AT's Weather to Go. It has radar on it, so you can work around the rain or the storms. If you have some outdoor activities or you want to go somewhere, that app will keep you out of harm's way. It'll notify you. It'll give you a twisting storm alert. If there's a tornado, for example, it'll give you a danger storm approaching. All this stuff will give you a lot of extra time to prepare or get out of harm's way, for example. It's free. It's on Apple and Google Play. I'll be broadcasting live should tornadoes occur, regardless if it's, in the afternoon or evening. If it's overnight, I might be sleeping with you. We'll see. Play it by ear. But I do try to cover the tornado events when they do happen here across Oklahoma. And I cover the whole state. If they cross over the border into Kansas, and I'll talk about you guys up there, and same thing down across like North Texas, if that were to happen also, and all the way to western Arkansas. Let's see. I think that's pretty much it. So tomorrow we'll do a live at noon again, and we'll see if the new data in the morning has said anything, and I'll make a quick post on Facebook and social media accounts, let you know. And we'll see how overnight goes. And so if you're late and you missed it, just make sure you have a weather radio on, a weather app handy. Make sure you have a game plan, your clothes nearby, your shoes nearby, kids know what to do. We're going to go it's lowest floor, right in the center of the part of their home. It can be a stairwell, it can be a bathroom, closet, whatever you got. Basically, it's just away from all outside walls and windows. Right now, the indications would be probably mostly weaker tornadoes tonight if they were to happen, which is good. So it'll be loud, scary, but they won't do too much damage if that's the case. So fingers crossed on that outcome. And then tomorrow, like I said, if they happen in the afternoon, those will be a lot stronger given the atmosphere to work with, assuming that we can destabilize enough. So there you go. But we'll take each one day at a time, and that's pretty much how you do it. And then that's our spring. So we end up at the end of May winding things down. So we extend it to about mid-June. And then after that, we kind of shut it down unofficially. You still sometimes will get severe storms through July, but they're a different breed, and they're usually not tornadic and all that kind of stuff. So that's good. All right, so that was a total recap and showing you everything there was. Thank you guys for liking the video tonight, sharing it, subscribing to the channel, telling your friends and family about AT's weather. You will not get this type of scientific digestion of all the data in a very calm manner than anywhere else. At least you used to not be able to. I don't know, might be a lot of copycats out there now, but back in my day, that was it. Otherwise, just hype and scream and doom and gloom. So anyway, so if they're tired of that, send them on over. I got them. I'll put them under my wing, and I'll take good care of them. And that's it here for me. You guys have a great rest of your night. Hope you sleep well, and we will see you again tomorrow. And again, hope there's no tornadoes tonight. Again, there might get one or two. Can't rule it out. But otherwise, I think most of the storm should behave. We'll just see what happens by daybreak. All right, take care, everybody. Good night.